Good afternoon and welcome to the Caregiver Teleconnection. My name is Glenda Rogers and I'm going to be the facilitator for today's session. Today we have with us Dr. Tam Cummings, and she's going to be talking about stress and the dementia caregiver. But before she gets started, let me introduce Candace Ramos. She's with Vitas Healthcare and they are sponsoring this session today. So Candace, tell us a little bit about Vitas Healthcare, please.
Thank you, Glenda. At Vitas, we care for hospice patients wherever they call home with an interdisciplinary team comprising of a nurse, physician, aide, social worker, and a chaplain. Our teams design personalized care plans to ensure comfort, dignity, and quality of life. Vitas offers several key services that support patients and their families as they provide hospice care at home. Our telecare clinicians are available via phone 24/7, 365 to answer questions and dispatch someone to the bedside if necessary. Medical equipment and medications are delivered to the home as well, and respite care provides up to 5 days of Medicare certified inpatient care for a hospice patient so that family members can take a break from their caregiving duties. Vitas Healthcare currently provides hospice care in 14 states, California, Florida, and Washington, D.C., to name a few. And in the great state of Texas, where I am, we have locations in San Antonio, Austin, Houston, Dallas, and Fort Worth. For more information, you can call Vitas Healthcare at 1-800-723-3233 or visit www.vitas.com for information and support from the nation's leading provider of end-of-life care. I hope you enjoyed today's call.
Thank you so much, Candace, and thanks Vitas Healthcare for their sponsorship of this session today. If you do not have Vitas in your area, you can call 211 or your directory assistant and find a hospice provider that might be local to you. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Cummings before she starts her presentation. Dr. Tam Cummings founded her company in 2009 with a mission to inspire, educate, and empower dementia caregivers. Now her professional gerontological practice in the Texas Hill Country is recognized as one of the leading educators of dementia caregivers and program design for dementia care nationally. Tam, welcome to the call.
Thank you, Glenda, and thank you, Vitas. Thank you, hospice people, for all that you do for us at the end. You guys are just always remarkable and amazing people. Okay, so Glenda, you and I have been talking a lot about how concerned we are with the stress that dementia family caregivers have been under, the stress that our professional caregiving teams have been under. And there's quite a few things that can occur as a result of this. For the first time ever, we're beginning to look at our professional caregivers as having developed post-traumatic stress disorder during the last 3 years, as they have in skilled facilities, nursing homes, memory care communities, just had death after death after death due to COVID, and it has taken a toll on them. It's also taken a tremendous toll on our family caregivers. We're finally able to accept that family caregivers also develop secondary traumatic stress disorder, commonly called compassion fatigue, and in the past thought only to be something professionals could develop. And it's probably not at all unusual for us to think at this point that we need to be looking at family caregivers as having PTSD, given the lockdown of the last few years and given the daily stressors that they're under. It is tremendously stressful, Glenda, as you know, to be a caregiver, and especially stressful to be the caregiver of a person with dementia, just because their death is something that is progressive and is happening slowly over time, and it causes tremendous emotional and physical changes in the family caregiver. So before COVID, Glenda, does this make you think anybody you know?
Could be me.
could be you and me both. Compassion, when we talk about post-traumatic stress disorder or compassion fatigue, which is secondary traumatic stress disorder, we first have to think about what compassion is. And compassion means that it is better for all of us if we suffer together. And compassion itself emotionally is rooted in human beings from a deep evolutionary standpoint, from back when we lived in families and in tribes. And when something happened to a family member or to a tribe member, you and I were able to do something helpful. It might have been cooking, it might have been caring for someone, it might have been taking over the chores or the job of what that person would have done. But this comes back from eons of human evolution, that we feel compassion for another person, and that we feel so motivated that we want to do something to relieve their compassion. Now, this is also one of the reasons, Glenda, why it is not good for us emotionally to watch so much news, to watch very negative things being thrown at us constantly. Newscasters are taught to talk in a certain way, in a very staccato, very aggressive fashion, in order to get your attention. And the problem is, when you and I are confronted daily with one horrible event after another, it literally overwhelms us, because I can't reach out to that family to make them better. I can't reach out to people in 50 different states to try to help what's going on. And so watching the news actually drives down our compassion and has a very negative impact on us. Now, compassion is not empathy. Empathy is something, Glenda, as social workers, you and I learned to turn on, and we learned to turn it off. We had to be able to turn on our empathy so that we could walk in another person's shoes, so that we could feel as best we could what they might be feeling if we were in that situation. But compassion is something that only occurs if we already have empathy, but we also have a desire to help someone. So it is based in something very, very deep rooted in us. And that's why, Glenda, when you and I see someone begging for money at the traffic light or the stoplight or under the bridge or wherever it is, it causes us to have an effect emotionally. And if we focus too long on the person, it begins to cause us to want to do something else. And it can, given everything that's going on, begin to be simply very overwhelming to us. I've lost my clicker and where it goes. There we go. Okay, compassion, when we feel it, Glenda, causes really cool things to happen in our brain. It causes the bonding hormone of oxytocin to release. And when we feel compassion for another person, it causes our brain to light up in a way that it only lights up when we feel compassion. When you and I feel compassion for someone or something, our heart rate actually begins to slow down, although it may even feel to us like it's speeding up. And you literally, physically, physiologically, emotionally, mentally feel better when you show compassion to another person. Now, the hard part, Glenda, is treating yourself with the same compassion you give to others. And that includes the way you treat total strangers, is frequently nicer than how you and I treat ourselves. And it's something that it's very, very difficult for us to do. And it simply means, Glenda, that I look around at what's going on in my life and I'm able to say, I'm doing okay. And yet for many of us, we can't do this. We don't like self-compassion as Americans. This is not part of our culture. We might see this as being needy or seeming soft or weak. As Texans, this certainly is not part of our makeup. We don't do that stuff. We don't need those kind of things. We're tough. We don't need that. And so we don't see self-compassion as something that we actually need to do for ourselves, something that we've been doing since before birth. But around the age of 5 or 6, we begin to lose the ability to use self-compassion. Self-compassion may feel like it's going against those core beliefs of self-reliance. I mean, Glenda, we love to brag in Texas. We're the only state that was our own country. You are so lucky we joined you. It may make you feel even worse physically or emotionally. It may make you feel flawed. And one of the big reasons about self-compassion, Glenda, is you and I are more familiar with that internal voice of a parent or ourselves constantly criticizing everything we do. We never do it good enough. And you will hear it in things you say. Like you make a mistake on something silly around the house and you don't think, oh, silly mistake. You go, oh, that was so stupid. Why did I do that? I'm such an idiot. That is something we're much more familiar with than, you know what? I don't have anything to do today. I can take this hour right now and just do something for me, whether it's a bubble bath or reading a book or sitting quietly or taking a walk, whatever it might be, because we're so much more familiar with that voice that tells us we're not worthy. And then some of us have trouble with regular compassion. I actually went to school with this guy, Glenda, and he scared me then. We're suspicious of other people, fearful of appearing dependent. And this is especially difficult for men because men have been socialized to be dependents, to not ever show fear, to not ever show any emotion other than strength and fearlessness. Instead of recognizing that men hurt, men grieve, we all have the same emotions. People who are troubled by compassion may think others are trying to trick them, that they're trying to do something, and that you being kind to somebody, and if you'll think about this long enough, you've met this person, they're actually, you can watch their anxiety increase as you try to be nice to them. The idea of somebody treating them compassionately who has no reason to other than we're human feels very foreign and may actually frighten the person because of the emotions that it makes them feel, but that fright is going to come out as anger. Does that make sense, Glenda?
It does. And I know those people.
I'm related to many of them. And then I'm trying to find my clicker. There it goes. Okay. And then some people simply don't see that they need self-compassion because they see themselves as being upset or bitchy or pissed off or intimidating and sad, and everybody's afraid of them. And what they're really feeling is alone and empty and bored and angry and like nothing. And again, on top of all of that is that constant self-criticizing voice you heard. There's something that happens to us when we grow up, Glenda, and it's not unusual that a family member decides that the person you were at 12 is who you are now as an adult. And so they talk to you as though you're 12, they treat you as though you're 12. And if you ever did anything that was a mistake, you did something wrong, what a shock. We're human beings, we might have done something wrong. This family person continues to wrap your identity around that one thing you did. And so that is a voice that we can very commonly hear in our family. To practice self-compassion means to practice self-nurturing. It means to engage with yourself without blaming yourself, to understand that suffering is there and that there are ways to alleviate suffering by being kind to yourself. And sadly, Glenda, you know, I like to research, beer does not count as a way to be kind to yourself. Actually, beer, bad, beer, bad. Now, originally in self-compassion, we did it naturally. You sucked your thumb. It told your nervous system that you were okay. It told you that the things around you were safe. It told your parasympathetic nervous system, your body, that you were safe. It let you grow and continue developing as a human because it allowed frontal cortex development to continue. And it made you thoughtful. It made you calmer to people around you. Do you remember taking the pacifier away from your baby? It didn't make them calm at all. Some started very, very early. This is actually a picture of a fetus in utero sucking its thumb. It's a very famous baby now, you just don't know it. Our next training in being able to show self-compassion and self-nurturing to ourselves came from our mom. And our moms and our dads and our grandparents hugged us. Our aunts and uncles hugged us. They held us. You come climb up on my lap, little fella. You come up here, little girl. Tell me what your day's been like. And then all of a sudden, around the age of 5 or 6, you begin to weigh 50 pounds. And literally within a day, climbing up onto a lap came to a screeching halt. And when that came to a screeching halt, you stopped getting as many hugs. You stopped feeling the warmth around you, the comfort and safety around you of mom or whoever that person was, because you simply were bigger and there were no more laps. And there became this natural human thing of you need to step aside now. You're too big to be held. You need to start being on your own. And so for some people that can be very, very shocking. And as always, it's important that you remember to just breathe. Now, I learned a new breathing technique this a couple of weeks ago, Glenda, and instead of breathing into 4, holding to 2, and breathing out to 6, to help yourself go to sleep at night, you breathe into 4, count, hold to 7, breathe out to 8. So breathe into 4, hold for the count of 7, breathe out to the count of 8. And this helps tell your body that it's time for bedtime. And I've been doing a lot of night meditation, sleep meditation with the mindful movement on YouTube because it's free and I'm cheap. And one of the biggest things that I've noticed that Sarah Rayburn does on this is she says repeatedly, you are safe. Feel the surface beneath you that's holding you. You are safe. And then breathe. And that breathing technique is quite powerful. Now, Glenda, is this kind of how your look in the mirror says? It's what you feel like when you wake up in the morning? Holy smokes, what's today going to hold? Yeah, I thought that was you. So I woke up feeling that way. So I called my friend Amy, the therapist, and she told me to call Pam, the therapist. And Pam, the therapist, when I talked to her, said, oh, simple. Get yourself some self-compassion. I said, that's great. Where do I go to get the self-compassion? And she said, well, you don't go anywhere. You just have to face your fear. I didn't want to do that. She said, well, face your fear in a kind and gentle way. And I didn't know what that meant. So she sent me to Dr. Kristen Neff's website, which is self-compassion.org. And Dr. Neff is one of the gurus of self-compassion. This is what she studies at the University of Texas in Austin. And when I went to her website, I thought it was going to feel really, really good. Glenda, I went to her website, and her website, she says, yeah, this is a moment of suffering. Suffering is part of life. Be kind to yourself in this moment and give yourself the compassion you need. So it wasn't as quick as I thought it was going to be. And when I went to the website, it's self-compassion.org, as I scrolled down, I found that there was a test on there I could take on my phone or on my computer. It only took a couple of minutes to take. And Glenda, what I found out when I finished was that this was a moment of suffering, and suffering is part of life. And rather than being kind, I'll just beat myself up right now, and I'll manage to make this my fault, everything in the world, my fault, everything that's going wrong. It's all my fault, my fault, my fault, my fault. I'm a bad, bad, bad person. And that's what I found out when I took the test, is that I am not kind to myself. I was not paying attention to what I needed. And I was listening constantly to that negative voice in my head. So as you and I think about what it means to be self-compassionate, Glenda, and for everybody who's out there, if you're out there, then I'd like you to write down 2 things that you would do to physically show support to a friend who is in your same life. If you could suddenly change lives with Oprah, what would you tell yourself as Oprah? And then I want you to write down 3 kind and supportive things you would say to a friend that's hurting. So Glenda, if I wanted to physically show support for you, I'd hug you.
Yep.
I wouldn't breathe around you, but I'd hug you. I'd hug
Exactly.
you.
Wear a mask.
I would. I'd come be near you. I might physically drive to where you are and bring you food. I might physically pick up the phone and tell you I'm here for you, even though I can't see you right now, I'm still here. What are 3 kind and supportive things you would say to me if you saw me hurting?
Would say to you?
What would you say to me? In fact, what are 3 things you've said to me over the last several years as you've seen me hurting?
That I'm here for you. If you need to talk to someone, I'm here, just a phone call away, anytime, night or day, and that I mean that sincerely. That I am sorry that you're going through what you're going through, as one of those things that happen in life. That I care about you.
And there's one more thing Glenda has said to me, and I don't know if this will be helpful to any of you, but it was very helpful to me. One day Glenda's called me and said, for Pete's sake, they can't eat you. Get up out of bed and keep going. So,
Forgot
you
about
know,
that one.
there could be some tough love things in there, but basically kind and supportive things that we would say. As you think about the care you're giving, and I know that some of you online here are professionals, and some of you are here because this is the person that you love. So as you complete these sentences, think about the reason you give care. My purpose in life is that I was put here to explain dementia to people. My passion in life is I love old people. I love old people with dementia, and I persist because I believe we can make a difference in how people are cared for. Glenda, your purpose in life is what?
Well, similar to yours, maybe not so specific, but I'm here to help other people to show that there are people in the world that do care about you, even if you don't know them, and that we're working for their benefit.
And your passion is older populations, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And you persist because?
It's a calling. I don't know how.
Because they can't
I
eat you.
was born to do that.
I believe it. I believe it. And so for each of us, fill out, what is your purpose as a caregiver? What is your passion? And you persist because, and for many of you, it's going to be you persist because of vows, you persist because of love, you persist because you're a good human being. And that's probably what most of us would do. When I think about family caregivers, Glenda, there are so many words that come to mind, and they include trustworthy, compassionate, fearless. I have seen families absolutely get up in a doctor's face that I'm scared of and not back down because they're taking care of their loved one. Loving, forgiving. Hardest part is being forgiving to yourself. And remember, if you had a friend doing exactly what you were doing right now, how would you take care of them? And these are probably words you would use to describe a friend doing what you're doing. It just, Glenda, can it be so much harder for us to see that we're doing these same things? We're not perfect. I look back on things that I know now about dementia and things I did. Oh, Glenda, I'm horrified at some of the things I did to a person with dementia, never realizing that what I was actually doing was probably driving them nuts. And that I was coming up behind people and tapping them on their shoulder and saying hello and thinking that they could see me, and not realizing for years that they couldn't see any of us passing them and saying hello. So we have to realize to forgive ourselves that we are imperfect, but basically we're humans doing the very best we can. So I want to teach you some ways to do compassionate touch. And the reason for this, Glenda, is our elderly population are the people least likely to be touched, and dementia people are the least likely of the elderly to be touched. So I want to teach you a couple of things to do to touch yourself, because especially going through COVID, you've missed touch of children, of grandchildren, great-grandchildren. You may have missed the touch of friends, family. Things have been difficult. So first of all, just put your hand over your heart. And when you move and you put your hand over your heart, it instantly tells your parasympathetic nervous system that you're okay. You can go ahead and move your hands to your stomach and place your hands over your stomach. Take a few deep breaths, and that will calm you down. Glenda, if you're starting to feel overwhelmed, doing something as simple as laying on the ground, laying on a couch, laying on a bed, doing something to lay down and change your view can change your mindset. Rubbing forearms is very helpful to soothe ourselves because we just haven't gotten enough touch, and we know that human skin has to be touched. We know there's actually been a reaction because over the last 3 years, professional caregivers have not been able to touch residents with dementia the way they would have been able to in the past because of the fear of spreading COVID. And so we know there's been a specific decline in dementia people because of not being able to be touched. Hug yourself. You may not have been around anyone for a few days, so give yourself a hug. And Glenda, this, like you're holding a little kid's face in your hand, this is very soothing. If you're listening to someone talk and you really want to hear them, do this, or if you want to totally ignore them, do this too. This can make you very relaxed. And then you can always dance like no one's watching. But if I don't have time to dance, if I can remember to just do my heart, my stomach, if I can remember to do this, I calm down very, very quickly because it tells my body I'm safe. Glenda, this is a rare picture of monsters practicing self-compassion. You'll notice they all have their hands over their hearts. Hard to get that picture. So as dementia caregivers, then came COVID-19. And then after 3 years, you thought it couldn't get any worse, but it did because it just keeps mutating and more things happen. And so I called Pam, the therapist, and I said, it just keeps getting worse. What are you doing? And she said, well, I've added more stuff to my daily routine of care for myself. So I did the same thing. Pam went from doing 4 specific techniques a day because she's a trauma therapist to doing 6. So I increased what I did too. I did meditation, and I have done all of Deepak Chopra's meditations on YouTube and on podcast. I've done Therapy in a Nutshell because, again, it's free. It's on YouTube, Therapy in a Nutshell. I do the mindful movement because all of these things help me do meditation, and meditation helps me rewire connections in my brain. It helps protect me from aging. And Glenda, one of the weird things about the brain is that if something bad happens to you and I, and we continue to talk about how that bad thing happened, our brain will actually make it worse, make it bigger, make it more upsetting than it already was. For exercise, even a few minutes outside lowers your blood pressure. So as you're doing exercise, try to increase it. Human bodies actually evolved to walk between 8 and 12 miles a day, not 300 feet. So movement is especially important. And if you can't get outside to walk, look up wheelchair exercises on YouTube. Look up chair exercises. You can do a huge amount of work by doing chair exercises. If you are outside, be mindful. Being mindful means being still, being in the moment, and focusing on a flower or a leaf, not just the flower, but the color of the flower, the tiny details of the flower. Try to look at what are things that you don't normally notice, the color of the bark of the tree or the veins of the bark of the tree. And then sleep, Glenda. You can't have empathy or compassion if you're too exhausted. So it's important you get sleep. I have used the mindful movement as a way to help me move from insomnia to a more scheduled sleeping routine. And it has done a great deal towards helping me be able to get routine and normal sleep. Remember that there are tools that will help you ignore that old critical you that you've listened to that dialogue from. Meditation on YouTube helps. Journaling is very, very important. And we know, Glenda, that if you take a journal and every day you write down 3 things you're grateful for, that in 2 weeks, your immune system will begin to improve. You can also journal just for yourself. Meditation or adult coloring books help to calm you down and help with meditation. And you've got to throw out that family dialogue. If you have crazy mean aunt, you don't have to keep dealing with crazy mean aunt. Don't go see that person anymore. It reminds me of walking into a yard where a dog bites you every time. Quit going into that yard. That dog's going to bite you. That person's going to be mean to you. Stop hanging around them. Find a therapist. You may need a therapist who specializes in caregiver stress. You may need a therapist who specializes in trauma. Do reality checks. There but for the grace of God go I. No matter how bad your day is, I can promise you someone else is having a worse day. And when I would have a terrible day and say to my grandmother, oh, this day is so terrible, she would say, if this is the worst day of your life, what a wonderful life you will have. Use music, use comedy, use things around you to make you feel better and to help you be able to laugh and be able to get through harder and harder times, because distraction is waiting on every corner. My grandmother used to say, what if elephants had wings? They'd be big birds.
Big birds.
But they don't. When we begin to think, what if, that leads to anxiety, because that's us living in the future. When we begin to think coulda, shoulda, woulda, that is thinking in the past, staying in the past, and that leads us to depression. Instead, stay in the present. This is the only moment you and I are actually responsible for. This is how we all feel. This is a normal thing to feel, but you got to realize this isn't really how it is. Self-compassion means treating yourself with kindness versus judgment. It means reality today versus those old messages from an old family member or somebody you used to know who doesn't even know you. It's being common humanity versus isolation, mindfulness over identification, treating yourself the way you would treat others versus forgetting that you and I are only human. We're just doing the best we can, like everybody else we know. And that's allowed. Reality checks help. I bet he never sticks his face right up against a porcupine again. And then write a letter to yourself today, and start the letter with dear, extraordinary, and special, wonderful self. And, we say extraordinary, Glenda, without realizing that what that word actually broken down to means is extraordinary. We forget that it means extraordinary. And those of you doing care are extraordinary. And those of you who do this for a job, also extraordinary. Thank you for being people who care, for stepping up to protect others. We tell you when your loved one is in a community that we want you to watch out for everybody. Your job there is to also keep an eye out for others. That's just human nature. For your patience, your dedication, your sense of humor. I mean, people with dementia do funny stuff, Glenda. You and I have seen it. We've laughed. They are funny. And you've got to remember, you have done tremendous things. You're a good friend. You're a good spouse. You've been a good parent. You've been a good step parent. You arrive on time. You do the necessary work. You do the work nobody else wants to do. And some of you are doing work because you have no other choice. And one more thing I want you to remember today is that this is what you do for others. And it's so important that you go and do this for yourself. So now let's talk about compassion fatigue. Okay, that was enough of that sweet stuff. Let's get on to the real stuff now, Glenda. Compassion fatigue is not burnout. Burnout is, Glenda, I'm burned out. I need a weekend off. I need to have a margarita. I need to go down to San Antonio, kick my feet up for a little while. That's burnout. Compassion fatigue is, I know the right thing to do. I just don't care anymore. And so I don't do it. And I can end up losing my job and my license as a result of that. Compassion fatigue's medical name is secondary traumatic stress disorder. It is not burnout. It's very subtle. It's very sneaky. And yes, it has a rapid onset. It comes on very, very quickly. And the person begins to change how they behave around others. And one of the primary things they feel is overwhelming exhaustion. Now, Glenda, when I teach this to professionals, every single person in the room goes, I don't have it. And yeah, some of you do. And the risk factors are the same for professional caregivers as they are for family caregivers: a lack of knowledge, resources, and energy. Work. Some of you are still working outside of the home. Some of you are caregiving 24/7, 365, and still working outside of the home. Everybody's got a crazy family member. Glenda, you've been a professional for years. You were head of area agency on aging of the CAPCOG. Everybody has a crazy family member. It's just life. Everybody's got somebody on drugs, somebody who drinks, somebody who abuses. Everybody has that. It's okay. It happens. You may feel like there's no help. You're exhausted and it's work, 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 work. And then everybody's got a family member who's been mad at everybody else for 50 years and no one knows why. So all of those risk factors are there. And on top of all of that, family caregivers have a little bit of guilt, have a lot of guilt, have tremendous amounts of guilt. Now, there are signs that you're beginning to be impacted by the care you're doing, and it includes denial. That's one of my favorite ones. Nothing's happening to me, but my hair's on fire. Anxiety, depression, irritability, anger, sleep changes, exhaustion. When you and I are exhausted, we get angry. When we are depressed, a lot of times depression and anger are very close together. Anxiety makes people angry. And when we are exhausted and have trouble concentrating, Glenda, our first thought is, oh, I've got it too. And that just leads everything down again, and we get even more beat up and slumped over. And so some of us, Glenda, begin to use some coping methods. They're a little questionable. Shopping, smoking, sipping, sex. These are three of my nieces, Glenda. They're actually at Texas A&M. They kept telling my mother they couldn't come home on the weekend, Grandma, because they were studying at the library with Jack and Jim. And my mother had no idea the library was actually a bar. It is drinking beyond what you should be drinking. And right now, this is hard for me to say because Texas continues to lead the nations in drinking during COVID. Go Texas. It's smoking and increasing smoking. It's shopping. Shopping feels great, but then the bill comes, shopping beyond your means. And it's having sex with people you shouldn't be having sex with. So it would be sex with somebody you're not married to. And then some people begin to isolate and blame. Glenda, I used to work with this guy. Yeah. He just left one Thursday and never came back. So people begin to avoid work. They begin to use all of their sick days. And then the dreaded multitasking Wonder Woman or Superman. Those of you who believe you can do it all, whether you're a professional caregiver or a family caregiver, you just keep saying, no, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. A lot of times in family caregiving, the reason you have become this person is you're not telling anyone else to help you. And when your children look at you, when stepchildren look at you, when family members look at you, they look, oh, look, she's got it all together. Give people stuff to do. Your children are afraid of you. Your stepchildren are probably afraid of you. Give people tasks to do. People want to help. They just don't know what to do to help. And remember to stop and breathe. What you are doing is incredibly hard. If your loved one is already in stage 5, you're doing the work of 12 professional caregivers, and we go in every 8 hours, rested and refreshed. If your loved one is in stage 6, you're doing the work of 16 professional caregivers. You can mentor yourself. You can mentor others. You can be mindful. You can do meditation, and you can use self-compassion, but you cannot ignore it. Stop nurturing yourself or expect others to fix it, because if that happens, you're not going to survive the disease process. So observe your body. When you breathe, feel what your body is feeling. Look at yourself and proceed with kindness and compassion. Glenda, I know somebody that their kindness and compassion is every single day, no matter what, they take a bubble bath. That is when they stop and say, the day is over. I've done the best I can. Yours may be a cup of coffee and a book, a cup of hot tea and a favorite book. It may be an old movie you've watched over and over, but what you have to remember is you can only control you. It's the only thing I really have control over, Glenda. I don't have a control over a loved one with dementia. I don't have a control over anybody else but me. Right now, what I know is my loved one is safe. I know that they are stressed. I know they have PTSD, but I know that people in our communities are doing the best that they can. It's okay to turn the news off. Remember your icebreaker of grabbing a cube of ice, going to the sink, squeezing the ice really, really tight, shut your eyes, take 10 deep breaths,
Yep.
add in a walk, And find ways to meditate. Your meditation, Glenda, may be breathing, mine may be gardening, somebody else may be music, but find a way to do it. Prayer and gratitude and blessings. Count your blessings. Be grateful for what we have. Do reality checks. Use this time to reinforce relationships with family or friends that you've lost. Do a good deed for those that are still on the front lines. Nobody's had a parade for our skilled facility workers or our memory care workers. Take everybody a load of donuts. Glenn, did you know you can buy out a whole donut shop for like $100? I've done that multiple times at nursing homes. That's amazing what you can get with $100 in a donut shop. Stay focused on the positive. People are giving your loved one good care. They really, really are. And we will get through this. As Glenda's father used to say, they can't eat us. Let's keep moving. And remember to do self-compassion. Love you for all the good things that you have done for someone else. And then throw away your phone. Set the phone down. Tell your kids, don't call me after this hour. I don't answer the phone. Tell your kids you're going to the store. For God's sakes, if you go to the store and you're gone for 5 minutes and we can't call you, we're going to call the police. Learn to be a friend to others. Learn to share what you have learned. Join a support group. You can be online, you can go in person. And know that no matter what, you don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I know a lot about dementia. I don't know it all. If I can't find it, if I don't know it, I'll go find it. But understand that there are intense emotions. And Glenda, some of us really need to scream. We need to let out the anger and the emotion that's in us because it all piles in right here. You know how you have a glass of water, Glenda, and you fill it up with water and it's even, and then you add a little more water and it bows up, but it doesn't run over. But then you put a few more drops in, the glass doesn't empty, only a few drops fall out. Dementia family caregivers are filled with the water at the brim, bowed up. And what we need you to do is try to get some of this emotion out of yourself. So put the dogs and cats in another room. Turn on the shower, turn on the TV, turn on the radio. Wrap a towel or a dish towel tightly, bite it, and scream as loud and as hard as you can. And when you do this, try to stay focused on your anger. You're angry at the disease. You're angry about finances. You're angry this isn't how retirement was supposed to be. You're angry at children or stepchildren. Try to stay focused on the anger as you scream. Try not to let tears start until the anger is out. And then you may or may not cry. Get a cup of hot tea. And I usually recommend, Glenda, that people do this before bedtime because you can be carrying so much around with you that when you do this scream technique, it will exhaust you when you're finished. But for some people, this is how you have to let it all out. The dignity of life is you and I want respect. The dignity for dementia is that we give respect, and the dignity of what you are due to yourself is respect. You have to respect what you have done for your loved one. It will literally take an entire team of us to do what you have been doing by yourself without training for your loved one. Now, these are the things that I want you to look up online. And Glenda, based on people's computer availability, we may have to send these things out to them.
Right.
But we want you to measure yourself on Zaret's burden interview. And any score above 40 means you should be seeing your doctor. We want you to do the caregiver burden scale. Any score above 40 means you need to see your doctor. We want you to do the caregiver grief scale. This scale also helps you measure how advanced your grief is for your loved one. And the geriatric depression scale lets you very, very quickly determine whether or not you or your loved one is suffering from depression. And remember, depression is called pseudo dementia. And as a family caregiver of dementia, it's common that you would develop depression. As a person over the age of 75, you're in the highest group to have depression, but least likely to get treatment for it. And it will make you feel out of energy, out of sorts, and it will make you think you have dementia too. So all of these things are things that we want you to take, to put in your toolbox. And about every 2 weeks to a month, you should take these tests and see how you're doing. If you score higher than 5 on the geriatric depression scale, that is a positive test for depression, and you need to take the test to your doctor and start treatment for depression. Glinda, normally I leave people so depressed that they are barely able to move, and I may have done that again today. I don't know if we have any questions or if people just want to hang up and cry. That also has happened. And we actually finished a little bit ahead of time today.
That's unusual. I wanted to go back to what Gracie had said in the chat box, though, Cam. She thanked you for your comment about forgiving yourselves for a wrong action or thought we could have experienced while caring for a loved one. She said that one really hit home for her because she's so hard on herself about shouldn't have done this, but I didn't. And, you know, that catastrophizing is what I say. And I told her that she's not alone in feeling that. Do you have another comment for her?
Oh, yeah. At every conference that I do, at everything you and I do, Glenda, we inevitably have families come up, and sometimes they're crying. Sometimes they're very, very angry. And it is all due to they just learned something about dementia and realized that the thing they had been doing was the thing we would not recommend. We would prefer you do it this way. And they get very upset with themselves. And the reality is, I've spent 30 something years learning about this disease, and I don't know nearly enough. And you have spent years and years around this disease, and you don't know nearly enough. But this is what you and I have learned. Humans overall do the best we can at the time with what we know. And when we know better, we do better. And so we have families who do not understand their loved one's brain is dying, not because they're bad families, but because no one ever told them. No one told them that memory means everything you and I can do. No one told that family member that your loved one's brain is dying. And no matter what you do, this disease will continue until death occurs. Because of this brain damage, your loved one will display peculiar and odd behaviors, even though they won't look sick. And that may make you feel very frustrated and make you want to teach to them, because that's a human trait. Make you want to correct them over and over. That's a human trait. Make you believe that they're just pretending to do something, and they really do know how to do it because yesterday they did. And all that means, Glenda, is that you're human. You did the best you could at the time with what you knew. And when you know better, you do better. And that's what all humans do. My goal is always that when you finish a conference, when you finish a WellMed Charitable Foundation, that you will learn something during this time that will make you a better caregiver, not because you did something wrong, but simply because you didn't know. And when you know better, you do better.
We have several comments going on. Jenny had asked about staging, and Minerva graciously put up that presentation that you did on staging, so that would be available to everyone online. And Jenny said that this is going to help her care for her mom, and I said that's what we're here for. If we can reach one person to help them in their caregiving role, we have been successful. What is the best way, this is Janet, what is the best way to get to the scales to take as a caregiver? I'm not sure I understand that. This is great information, thank you. What is the best way to get to the scales to take as a caregiver? I'm not sure I understand that question, Janet. On the last slide, okay. Okay, she said it was on the last slide. The geriatric depression scale. All right, well, that just leads me into, after this call in a couple of days, you will receive there, and Becca put it up there, but you will receive a follow-up email, and we're going to have a lot of this information and resources there for you. But if you look there, Becca Pound has already put up that site for the geriatric depression scale, and we'll get the other ones up also. Thank you so much, Becca. I appreciate that. Let's see. Okay, so Melanie says, I care for my mom with early dementia. She lives with me and my husband. The situation has strained our marriage. Please advise resources that we can get counseling. Thank you very much.
I would say your mother is not in the early stages of dementia, or she would not be living with you and your husband, and that would not be causing conflict. I would say your mother is probably in stage 5 of the disease process. And stage 5 means that it's time for a skilled facility or for memory care. And
Yeah.
I would get the staging tools and look at where your mother actually is in terms of the disease process.
Yeah, and find out where she actually fits.
If it was early dementia, she would still be living at home. And
And
remember,
you wouldn't probably know she had dementia.
Yeah, and most people wouldn't be diagnosed until stage 5 of the disease. So if somebody's living with you at home and there's issues, that's usually an indicator that they're in stage 5 of the disease.
Right. Okay, so the chat box is open. If you called in on your telephone and not Zoom, you can press *6. That will unmute your phone. For all of you on Zoom, you can simply unmute your phone, raise your hand, or like we've been doing, putting information in the chat box. And I've been reading them for those people that are on their telephone and can't see what's in the chat box. That's why I go through and read it. I'm not trying to be redundant, but so if you have a question or a comment for Tam, she'd be happy to answer that for you. Okay, Becca, I'll find it and get it out. Yes, and I will send out information and resources that'll come out on the follow-up email in a few days for you. And let me just ask you, if you do get, and those are for those that register for the call today. If you didn't, you can call our customer service representative and she will help you get that information. But there'll also be questions there about how we did today on the presentation. Are there topics that we haven't covered yet that you would like to see covered? We'd love to hear from you if you'll take that couple of minutes and give us some feedback. I'm kind of surprised that we don't have any questions or comments this afternoon. That's unusual when I get Tam on these calls or on these sessions. She really gets a lot of them there.
I have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
What are some resources for family members to be able to find a therapist or support groups to help?
Oh, Tam's going, she doesn't know.
Yeah, I have no idea. In many places, you can call a memory care community, or you can call the Alzheimer's Association. And usually the Alzheimer's Association has a list of all the support groups in the area, as well as church respite groups. Glenda, do the area agencies on aging carry a list of support groups?
They should indeed, through their information referral systems. The other thing that just came to mind was also Dr. Jamie Heisman. When he's on, he always gives that information. And so I will find that for you. I think Psychology Today, he writes articles for them, and he has mentioned in his presentations that you can go to psychologytoday.com and put in your zip code, and it will give you different therapists in your area, and you kind of match. You know, that's kind of a testing thing that you do, and you can put in there the specific kind of therapy that you would like to have, and it'll also narrow it down there. But let me check that out, and I'll put that in the follow-up email.
And there are also therapists now, Minerva, who specialize in family caregiver therapy.
Yes.
There are people that specialize in trauma therapy for PTSD folks. So it's not just a one brand fits all kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then I cannot encourage you enough to not try out Therapy in a Nutshell on YouTube. She does 10 to 20-minute little nuggets of therapy on anxiety, depression, how these things happen to you, how that changed your brain, how you can help to rewire your brain so that these thoughts and memories don't become so overwhelming to you. That's a free thing. The mindful movement is free. That's meditation. Deepak Chopra is free meditation. So there's lots and lots of helpful therapy things on YouTube that can work for families that may feel like I can't get over to a traditional therapist or may not have the money for a traditional therapist.
Right. I'd say that was one of the, if there is a positive to everything that's happened with COVID, we have more resources that are available online or via your telephone than we used to have to help people with this. Okay, we have a couple of questions over here on our chat box. Let me see. This is Jenny, and my mom has been diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. Are there specific resources that are available? She already has Capgras syndrome. I'm not familiar with that one.
Capgras syndrome.
Thankfully, it is not aggressive. Any suggestions?
The catalog you want is catalog.ninds.nih.gov.
Okay.
There are catalogs from the nih.gov, and there is a 40-page one on Lewy body that is one of the best ones I've ever seen. It will be on page 2 of the list of catalogs, and it is downloadable or you can order it, but it gives you a tremendous startup and understanding of what Lewy body is, what you're going to be looking for, and what are things you're going to be watching for as the disease progresses. So I would go to the catalog site at nih.gov.
Isn't there also a Lewy body dementia association you've mentioned before?
lbda.org. LBDA, Lewy Body Dementia Association.org. LBDA.org.
All right. And I'll include all these in that follow-up email too. Becca, who's been so gracious in putting up some of these links to some of these documents for us. She said if you're in South Dakota, call them at Active Generation. So if you're in South Dakota, there is a resource for you there. In Illinois, you might start with the County Senior Services Department, and that's probably true in most states. They'll find something under senior care. Many rehabilitation facilities offer support groups. Yes, that's true, Sandy. Thank you. Guinevere, let's see. My husband was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2017. He can't stop intensive cleaning and taking items and hiding them. Why does he do this?
It's just he's hunting and gathering. He's not really hiding stuff intentionally. It's called hunting and gathering, and it's a normal activity for him to be doing. And the cleaning is, it's usually a circular motion, like they're cleaning tables, and they will do that for a while, and then eventually that behavior will go away. But it's just part of the behaviors we see in dementia. But the first one is not called hiding, it's called hunting and gathering. And it usually means they're very, very busy people.
For sure. Sandra, thank you. She's put up the Lewy Body Dementia website. We really appreciate that. And she said also on Facebook that there's a Lewy Body Dementia Caregivers group. So that's a good resource too, where you can connect with other caregivers that are facing the same issues perhaps you are. And Gracie said thank you for this session, and it has been a good session too. We're a little past 2 o'clock Central Time when I told you we would probably go over. Let me tell you what's coming up on the Caregiver Teleconnection while you're thinking about a question that you may want to ask Tam. I know she's zipping off to East Texas this afternoon. She's doing a conference out there. And so if you're in East Texas, take advantage of it. Look up the Area Agency on Aging, DP Texas, right?
Deep East Texas, going to be in Lufkin.
It's going to be in Lufkin, and so therefore,
Lufkin.
oh.
So it's a year of mayhem in Lufkin. I'm probably in the middle of it.
That's right. That is deep East Texas, I tell you. I'm in Central Texas, and Pam is north of me. And I was going to say Panhandle. It feels that way some days.
No, I'm in hill country.
In the hill country. Janet says, my husband has had 2 strokes behind the right eye and has affected his executive functioning. He also has Alzheimer's. They have diagnosed him with Alzheimer's, atypically presented as frontal temporal dementia. He does not fit any stages. Is there anywhere to find out more about this?
Look up logopenic variant Alzheimer's dementia. LVAD. It's a very rare form of dementia where you get a lot of the frontal temporal behaviors because of that frontal damage. And then you've also got something vascular going on, but you should be able to stage him on the staging tool, on the dementia behavioral staging tool.
Look for Debbie tomorrow. She's going to be there. Debbie Davidson.
All right, Debbie, looking for you tomorrow.
Yay.
Bringing you a new book, Debbie.
Oh, wow. I'm glad to hear that one. Janet said, can you repeat the name of that again one more time? She was the one that asked about her husband.
What was it I was repeating?
LVAB?
The what?
The one about her husband had strokes behind his eye and also diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
It's a very rare form of Alzheimer's. It's usually misdiagnosed as an FTD or as a vascular dementia, but it causes some unusual and odd behaviors. It's called LV, and then those are small letters, AD, capital letters. It's logopenic variant Alzheimer's dementia.
So
I would assume
LVAD.
Logopenic, LOGOPENIC, variant, VARIANT,
Right.
Alzheimer's dementia.
Okay. And I'll see if I can find a link for you, Janet, excuse me, and it will come out in that follow-up email.
Yeah, so I would look that up and see if any of that looked familiar to you. But if he's had strokes behind his right eye, that means he's had strokes in the frontal lobe, and that's why you're not seeing the executive function, because that's where executive function is, it's in the frontal lobes. And so with that on top of Alzheimer's, you would have a vascular dementia and Alzheimer's dementia. And then you may have, because of where the stroke is, something that looks like logopenic variant Alzheimer's dementia. But you can stage that dementia on the dementia behavioral assessment tool.
Okay. She said perfect. She appreciates you going back over that. So let me talk a little bit about upcoming teleconnection sessions. This morning was the start of the Pride of Caring Issues of LGBTQ plus caregivers and professionals, and that's 4 sessions this month with Dr. Elliott Montgomery Sklar and Lucy Verlock. So they did one this morning. There'll be one next Thursday, June the 9th, June the 16th, and June the 23rd at 10 o'clock in the morning Central Time, talking about the Pride of Caring. And they're going to have some guest speakers on there. I think it's going to be a really interesting series that they have going on. On next Tuesday, June the 7th, Lucy and Dr. Sklar will be back with you talking about Disaster Preparedness 101 for caregivers. And we are approaching the hurricane season. If you live down in the South like we do, we know about hurricanes, tornadoes. And so therefore that would be an interesting presentation, 10 o'clock Central Time on Tuesday, June the 7th. Jimmy said, thank you everyone, very helpful information received. She's taken off, and you are too, Tam.
I am.
You are. I will also include in that follow-up email contact information for Tam. She's happy to hear from you, and she will respond. You may have to give her some time because she does travel for her work, but she will get back with you if you can just give her a little time to do that. Well, I think we're at the end of the session, and Pam, you have final words about caring for yourself and being compassionate for yourself.
Oh, please see your doctors. Please, if nothing else, look at yourself in the mirror, realize what a good job you've done, and then ask yourself, if something happens to me, who will step up? And when the answer is no one, let's get back to taking care of you. Your loved one would be horrified to realize the stress you've put yourself under. Glenda and I will both tell you, when we meet you, you actually look worse than the person with the terminal brain disease. So please, please, please take care of yourselves. Okay.
Absolutely.
We want you to be the survivor. It's very
Right.
important.
Thank you so much for taking time out of what I know is a busy day to join us today. We're thankful for each one of you and what you're doing, and we certainly do hope that we will see you on future sessions. Sam's with us every month on the Caregiver Teleconnection, so join us again next month, and thank you again for what you're doing, and stay well. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Glenda. Thank you, WellMed. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.